there, welcome to this early morning shoot at the Hen Cloud in the Peak District. So you might be able to see the silhouette here behind me, which is known as Hen Cloud. I'm going to go there in a second, but it's part of a series of rocks that are formed by Ramshire rocks, Hen Cloud and the Roaches. Now locally they just tend to be called the Roaches. A lot of people don't realise they all have separate names, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up there for the sunrise, which will be looking back towards the Roaches, because I realised that even though I work only a few miles away from here, I've never actually been here and filmed a sunrise. So that's what we're going to do this morning. Come with me, and I know that I'm really going to enjoy my photography. So just at the moment, it's only going to be possible to take silhouettes. The sky is very plain this morning. I don't think there is a single cloud in the sky at all. So I'm going to have to make the most of what I get, but equally it should still be quite interesting because of the warm sunlight that I'm going to get. When I say warm, what I mean is warm in colour temperature. It's only about 3 or 4 degrees, so it's not particularly warm in temperature, but the colour temperature of the light is going to be quite warm because the sun's going to be very low, and it's going to stay low for most of the morning. So I should get quite a lot of interesting shots here. So at the moment I'm keeping my camera around my neck because at the moment it's really still blue hour, the sun hasn't come up, but I'm still seeing interesting shapes and compositions that I can take photographs of. Some of them might not work, some of them might work, but you just got to try these things and it gives you ideas for the future even if they don't work. So it's all about just being reactive to what's happening. Now, it's not the best way of taking photographs, it's better to have a plan, but in these kind of conditions, you've just got to take what you find. So I've got up onto the summit of Hen Cloud and I've seen some interesting compositions already. Just before the sun came up, there was some really interesting cloud over the top of the Roaches. So I've got a shot of that. Now that's dispersed slightly and moved off, so it didn't really pick up any of the colour. There's a few interesting bits of cloud up in the sky above me, and there's even a little bit of mist just rolling in at the moment, but it's nothing really spectacular. But as the sun starts to come down into the valley behind me, that should be quite interesting as well. So it just needs to get a little bit higher yet for it to come down into the valley with the reservoir down below looking off towards Cheshire. So I've just spent about half an hour focusing on the photography and trying to find some compositions that was interesting. I put the drone up as well a little bit and got some footage of that. But it has been quite difficult with not having a very interesting sky. The light is quite bright. And just the direction it is at the moment, it's been challenging. But one of the things I did try, and I'm not sure how this will work, I did take a photograph straight at the sun because I like the way that the wet grass was picking up the sunlight and it was almost sparkling. Now, I'm going to get quite a big amount of brightness from the sun at the top of the frame. Now this might be very atmospheric, or it might just completely wreck the picture. I'm not sure until I get it back in the computer and I have a look at it. What I've also done is I've taken some shots out over the valley with the sun just catching all of the trees down on the fields and the reservoir just over there as well. So the roaches here behind me rise to a height of 505 meters, and they're made from a rough sandstone known as gritstone. Now this is from the Nemorian age, and all of the gritstone in the area is called Roach's Grit. So all over the Peak District we come across this gritstone, but it's known as Roach's Grit because it takes its name from the roaches. I think I've got all of the photography I'm going to get from the top of Hen Cloud, so we're going to move on. And really the sun's got a little bit high for this location, but I still think there might be some photography to be had lower down. There's lots of interesting rocks, so I'm going to keep my eye open. We can have a look around the roaches and do a bit of exploring there because I've got plenty of time, and I do know that there's an old house stroke barn over there that we'll go and have a look at to see if we can do anything with that. And if we can't do anything today because the light is too harsh, it's worth remembering about it to come back again in the future. So it's really useful to have some ideas in mind, because even if the lighting's not great on the day that you're there, if you know that you can go to a certain location to get that really good photograph when the lighting's better, it's really good to have those bank of ideas just waiting for when the lighting's perfect. Just here, the view over to Ramshire Rocks is quite interesting, but I was struggling because I hadn't got any foreground interest. So I did find this tree just here, and I've tried a few different positions. One, I thought the tree was too much into the sky, and so I ended up with a lot of very plain sky. And so I moved a little bit further up the bank, which lowered the tree, which I think is slightly better. But I'm still not totally happy with this because I don't think the tree is strong enough as a bit of foreground interest. Now I have just spied a rock just over there, so I am going to have a walk over and try the rock as a foreground interest instead. I've used the rock as a foreground interest and I think I prefer it. I think it is stronger. Now it just shows just how important foreground interest is to get depth in your photograph. If you've just got stuff in the distance, it can look very flat and nowhere near as impressive as what you see with your eye. One other thing that I've just done that's really worth thinking about is when I set the camera up to start with, I looked through the viewfinder and there was a barn just over on one of the farms to the left that was just creeping into the photograph. Now I did think I could clone it out, which is possible, but by moving the camera only about 30 centimeters to the left, it changed my viewing angle. It kept the rock in the foreground, but it moved the barn out of the frame. And so then I don't need to do any cloning and I've got virtually the same shot. But just think about everything that's in your frame, and if you can improve it by just moving a few centimeters one way or the other, then that is really worth doing. What I've just wanted to try and do is take a photograph of the roaches here behind me. Now the sun at the moment is right behind the camera. If you see where the shadow is on my face, it's directly behind, and so it makes taking a photograph in that direction really tricky. I took this shot as an example of a really bad shot. It's the kind of thing sometimes you see people take because they're really impressed with the landscape and what they see, but actually it makes for an awful photograph. There's too many distractions, it's too wide, there's no foreground interest. So what I've been doing as I've been walking down this path is trying to find a little bit of foreground interest, but the problem that I've had is every time I set the camera up, the shadow from the camera ended up in the photograph. Now, yes, I can clone the shadow out, but it's a pain. So what I've done is I've eventually found some grass down here to make some foreground interest, and I've put the camera really low to the floor, because then I've hidden the camera and the shadow from the camera in an existing shadow that's already on the floor. I've managed to get the grass as some foreground interest and the rock in the background, and probably what I'll end up doing is cropping out some of the foreground because it's very dark and making it more of a letterbox format. So behind me now is the house that I saw from the top of Hen Cloud, and it's definitely a house and not a barn, because by the side of it there is an old electricity pylon that must have supplied electricity to it at some point, but it's now very dilapidated, so it kind of makes for an interesting photograph. Photographers do seem to be drawn to old disused relics because they make interesting photographs. Now just today it's not actually worth really taking its photograph because of the light and the very boring sky, but if we'd got some moody cloudy sky on the right day, then this could be really interesting. What I'll do now is I'll leave you with some of my favourite shots from the morning. So that's it for this video. Unfortunately, the sunrise wasn't as spectacular as I expected. The forecast did say there'd be a little bit more cloud. Now there were some wisps of cloud every so often, but they didn't last very long and they didn't pick up any colour. So unfortunately, they didn't add to any of the photographs. But even so, I've still done some good scouting, and I think I might have one or two photographs that are okay. But I've also done some experimenting just to try different things, and I've got an idea of a different location as well. If you have enjoyed this video, do let me know down below in the comments, or nip over to my Vero account, that's at Cloaked Photography. Leave me a comment there, and you can also see lots of my photographs. Now, if you like what I do on the channel and want to help support me to make future content like this, then you can also nip over to my Teespring store. There I've got lots of merchandise on offer, and a purchase really helps me out. So go and check that out, and don't forget the super thanks button as well. But you don't have to spend any money at all to support the channel. You can do that simply by clicking like, subscribe, and the bell notifications, because that really helps me out and it makes sure that you don't miss out on any future content. Watch out for next week's video, that goes live on Sunday. In the meantime, go and check out this video just up here. But all that's left now is to say, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.